Today, there are 2 million descendants of French-Canadian immigrants living in New England. These are our stories. Welcome to the French-Canadian Legacy Podcast.
Venez tous jeunes filles et garçons, je vais vous raconter l'histoire de notre immigration ici au USA, de grands aventuriers de pays étrangers.
This is the French-Canadian Legacy Podcast. I am Jesse Martineau. Now this week, I'm excited to be speaking with Nicole Gallant-Nunes, a professional genealogist from Eastern Massachusetts with over 20 years of experience. She specializes in Acadian and French-Canadian research with a subspecialty of early New England research. She's an expert on the history of the Acadians, a topic she's presented on multiple times, which we'll be talking about today. And I'm really excited to talk about an incredible project that she is working on that just sounds absolutely amazing. Nicole, welcome to the French-Canadian Legacy Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Now, before we get going talking about the Acadians and your project, I'd like to get kind of your story. So where are you from and how did you get interested in genealogy?
It's a long story in the sense that I knew my mom's side more growing up. My parents divorced when I was young, and so I lived with my mom and like my maternal grandparents I was super close to. So I'm very Italian, very Southern Italian from Naples on their side. And I knew my dad's side was like French Canadian. That's all they really said. Like, we're Canadian French. I'm like, cool. Well, what does that mean? And no one really elaborated. It just wasn't like talked about much. And so in high school, I kind of got more interested and I'm like, Dad, we got to kind of figure out where we're from here. So I realized that on my dad's side is all Acadian. And I realized like what Acadia is and who these amazing people are. And then my paternal grandmother is Quebecoise. So she has deep roots very much into Quebec along the St. Lawrence River. So I kind of have deep roots in both of those awesome places. And so I just went down a rabbit, you know how it goes. You go down a rabbit hole and you just keep going and you're finding all these amazing people. And so I really got into it, I would say, in high school. And then after high school, I tried about 1,000 different, occupations that I thought I might want to do.
Sure.
And I just like dabbled and I was like, nothing is drawing me in, but I kept going back to that genealogy, that hobby. And I just had a passion for it. It was like the history of it. I always loved history, finding all these people, connecting them to the timelines of history. And so I kind of went from there. And so I just started like very slow, just of course, doing my own tree. Friends and family like, hey, let me do your tree. And then I was like, why aren't I just doing this? And so eventually, like maybe 10 years ago, I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it. And I made my own genealogy business, which has been booming, which is amazing. I love it. And I do all different kinds of things, but mainly I stick to like the Acadian, the French Canadian, and like the colonial New England research. But I'm so in love with it. It's like a puzzle. It's like a treasure hunt. It's all those amazing things. And so I've just stuck with it. And I hope I keep doing it for as long as I can.
That's awesome. It's detective work, which I think is
Exactly.
super cool. No, that's cool. And I definitely want to talk about your business and kind of the services you offer. But before we get to that, I think it's awesome that even in high school, you became aware of the Acadian story. How did that really how did you really get your hands into that? Because I grew up in the French Canadian world, I gotta tell you, Franco-American world, and I didn't know anything about this story until I started doing this podcast.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, it was basically like, where did our family come from? French Canadian. And I'm like, well, like Quebec, like where are we looking here?
Right.
And the more I dug, I was like, wow, there's this whole French population that settled in Eastern Canada, like Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, New Brunswick, even Northern Maine, parts of Newfoundland, all these places, like even like Western, areas. And I'm like, well, where are our people from? Like, where did they come from? And so just in high school, I just got interested in that heritage. And I'm, where I'm from in Massachusetts, I'm from Danvers, small town. You're probably familiar with it from the Salem witch trials. We are Salem Village. So my great grandparents on dad's side, like they came down from Quebec to settle in Salem, the proper city next door, to work in the textile mills. So there was like the leather factories, the tanneries, and all those things. So we kind of knew that this was a French Canadian / Acadian draw here. And I'm like, well, with all these people around, that somebody must know the history, like of why, like where are our deeper roots? And so I just kind of started going back. It just wasn't talked about. And so I wanted to know more. And that really just sparked me into learning where we settled. And then, of course, as I'm learning about the Acadian expulsion, which was devastating. I'm like, how do people not know about this? We don't know much. Like, it's just not something that's recognized outside of the people that are in the academic world or the genealogical world. Like most people on the street just would not know, like, oh yeah, I'm French, I'm Acadian. It's like, well, do you know the history? And so that really grabbed my attention. And I wanted to just know everything I could, what led up to it, what happened during, where did all these people go? How did they persevere? It really interests me.
And the whole idea that it's this whole second French culture,
Mm-hmm.
because there's the Acadian like cuisine, language,
Mm-hmm.
culture, like
Yeah.
traditions. It's not the same as Quebec.
No,
It's
no.
it's
And they
got its
get
own
lumped in,
unique.
I think, a little bit like
Yes,
Canada in
absolutely.
general. And it's like,
Right.
yes, but like come to the United States and tell me that Massachusetts is the same as Louisiana or Texas or California. It's like, yes, same country, but it's just so different. I mean, their dialects are different. And it's just everything is it's beautiful, I think, but it's just everything is so vastly different. Yes, the same language technically, but just where they came from in France was also, like more towards like the Southwest. And it's just different. I just hope people understand, like, it's not like, that's why French Canadian is such a broad term. There's more.
Yeah, which is I mean, that's the very first episode we did of this podcast. The fact that a lot of times we don't know what to call ourselves
Yeah.
because French Canadians, does that exclude our friends that are Acadia? So we call ourselves Franco-American, but a lot of people don't
Mm-hmm.
understand Franco-American doesn't mean that our family arrived from France yesterday. So
Yes.
there's this whole separate
Yep.
history. But like you
Mm-hmm.
said, I mean, yeah, they say the same language, they speak French, but there's different phrases, there's different expressions. It's pretty
Mm-hmm.
unique and it's really, really cool to see. But let's talk about your business because I think this is very, very awesome. So tell
Yeah.
us, what is the name of your company and some of the kind of the services that you offer?
So it's Treasured Trees Genealogy Services. I picked that name just because I love the idea that our trees are treasured.
Sure.
It's just so it's special. We learn about all these different people. We draw such amazing connections to them. So I picked that name for that. And I started several years ago, 8 maybe or so now, where I decided to just do it like this is what I'm going to do full time as my job. And so I offer, like, obviously building family trees, researching. I also do verification services. Some people, it's really important for people to research their own family trees. That's the fun of it. I don't want to take that away from you. If you're researching your family tree, you hit a roadblock. It's like, I can't get past Marie. Like, I don't know. Sometimes you want just help saying, my tree's done. I'm confident-ish in it. Could you take a look and just verify it? Here's all the records. Am I making the right connections? And
Sure.
then I also do the genetic genealogy where I'm looking at DNA results. I'm helping people find their, biological families if they're adopted or if there's like an unexpected parent situation where someone isn't who they thought they were in their family tree. So that's always exciting, being able to connect people back to that. So I kind of do a wide range, a range of things, but I do speaking. I do like, lectures. I volunteer at local historical societies, genealogical societies, and basically tell people the beginning steps of how to build their tree, how to work with their DNA results, like the very basic levels. Because a lot of it, like as you get deeper into it, it's more advanced, but it helps people get going. And then I just answer questions. I'm an admin for several genealogy groups on Facebook. So people are
Cool.
always asking for help on there. I kind of point them in the right direction because I want to spark that love in them. I don't want to just do it all for you. Like, I'm happy to if you need me to, but I want you to fall in love with it too, because then it goes to the next generation. That's how we get future genealogists, right? You want to spread it around. So that's basically what I do. A little bit of everything. I get to pick what I do. If I feel like doing this day, this, that, it keeps it interesting and I love it.
Which is super cool. I know I was very fortunate when during COVID, I actually had a listener from out in Winnipeg who offered to
Mm.
do a lot of my genealogy. And I was like, "You got it, man. That
Yeah,
sounds great." And it's super,
we
and there's
love it.
just
We'll take any chance we can get to do that. Are you kidding?
it's it's just
Oh,
it opens up. It's funny because every time you make a discovery, it opens up more questions,
yeah.
which I think is really, really cool because there's definitely because I didn't know much when I first started. I found out, my I have a great grandmother that was a Richard. Apparently that's a
Okay.
Canadian
Yep.
name. I mean
Yep.
Acadian name,
We
excuse
would
me.
share them. Yes, I have both the Quebec ones and the Acadian ones.
There
So
you
for sure,
go.
cousins there right away.
And, and then on my mom's side is Thibodeau again. I found out
Yep.
that's an Acadian name. These are all things
Yeah.
that was absolutely new to me. But again, just ask more questions. Like, all right, so where do these guys come from? How did they end
Yep.
up from Acadia to Quebec. And what is that story? And the whole thing is just super, super fascinating.
Yeah, it's that curiosity. And the more you know, the more you want to know. My tree's done in terms of like as far back as I can get. I'll never be done though. I'm going to
Sure.
keep going back and back and back to find everything. Like I wish they all had journals. Like, what did you eat today? What
Right.
were your daily activities? Like I wish that was the case. I want to know everything because I'm
It-
weird like that. But that's the more you just want to know all of those things. Like, yes, the birth, marriage, the children when they died, like cool, like those main facts, but like what was your life like? Like did you fight with your neighbor? Like were you always arguing about whose side of the fence the cow was on, or like
Sure.
just the things that make them more human? You always want to know more.
Yeah. And what was the world like when because that's one of the questions I have. When somebody moves, especially a huge move from one place to another, there's always a push and a pull. And
Yeah.
so what was the world on the ground where you left to make you decide I'm going
Yeah.
to take my whole family and I'm
Yep.
going to start a whole new life separate from anything I've ever known before?
Yeah.
Like
You think
what
you think that we would be brave enough to do that, right? Like we think like, oh yeah, like because we're thinking in today's times, the resources we would have.
Sure,
Think of the king's daughters, you know,
of
the filles
course.
du roi, the filles mariées, the girls that came before the marriageable girls. They literally got on a boat and was like, you're going to go to this new world. Okay, here's a chest of, you know, like a dress and some sewing equipment and a few odds and ends. You're going to go there, you're going to find a man and you're going to get married, you're going to have a lot of children. You're going to have to help build the homestead. Like, good luck to you. Like these were young girls, they were teenagers to like
Sure.
20s. Some were a little older in their 30s, but like most were very young. Can you imagine just getting on a boat for months and just hoping that something better is on the other side? I can't even imagine. And then you have the Acadians who were forcibly removed from their lands, and they're ending up in all of these places where they're not wanted. They're seen as a burden, and they have like no resources to sustain themselves. How in the world did they manage to hold it together? Like, how am I here? How are we here? Right? You have Acadian ancestors. How are we here that
Right.
they managed to pull it together? It's amazing.
It is an amazing story. Let's get into the story a little bit. We've done some episodes on Acadie before, but I just want to make sure everybody listening, we're all on the same page. We talk about Acadia. What are we talking about? Where are we talking about here?
Yep. So it would be primarily in Nova Scotia. That was kind of the beginning settlement of Acadia. And then on the border of like Nova Scotia, New Brunswick is Beaubassin. That was a very big Acadian settlement. And then all the little parishes that settled in and around there. Around 1720, they moved over to Prince Edward Island and they kind of expanded that way. But as they built out, I mean, you're going south, you're going over towards Quebec, you're going a little bit like even in Newfoundland, they had like a small French settlement there for a while. And so all of these people just exponentially grew their population. So they were thriving. I mean, the earliest settlement was like 1604. They came and they're like, this is great. Let's set down roots. And then really in the 1630s is when the bulk of these arrivals came. It wasn't just the men who were setting up the colony. It was like these families. And so the first family settled, other children of those first families marry those, and that's why the Acadians are so incredibly endogamous. We all have the same ancestors. We all descend from a certain family like 6 times over, and that's because they all intermarried and they were in these small communities. So that's really the bulk of where it is. It's really in Eastern Canada. And then once, of course, the expulsion happened, we were just dispersed everywhere. So there's Acadian descendants literally all over the world. I was talking to a Gallant descendant who's in Japan, and I was like,
That's awesome.
how'd you get over there? That's cool. Some are in Australia, some are down still in the Caribbean. It's just amazing where everybody is. It's crazy. But that was the focal point of where they settled. And then we dispersed after.
And what I find fascinating, something that caught my attention when you're given that early history, is when you gave a year, was it 1604? That's before Quebec. That's before Quebec City. And a lot of times, I was guilty of this growing up too. I thought the French Canadian story started with Quebec City, or the Franco-American
and it was just around
story.
the same time. They kind of let's go inward a bit. Let's go down that St. Lawrence River, which became like the highway of settlement. And so they just kind of branched down into, and some people did go back and forth multiple times. Louis Hebert, he like was in Port Royal, Nova Scotia, and then he's like, you know what, I'm going to go to Quebec. And so he became like a prominent family there. So they kind of bounced back and forth in the early days of the settlement, trying to find the best, place where they could fit in the best with what they were offering.
Was there a specific place in France that they came from? Do they all come from the same area?
I wish we knew. Unfortunately, of course, if you know, going back with Quebec records, you know how tough it is to get into France with those records. So many were lost and destroyed through the revolution and all of those things. So we know from the ships that we do know that landed in Acadia, a lot of them were from the area around La Rochelle in the Southwest. So we're assuming that area for a lot of them. But like with French Canadians, there was like Paris, there was La Rochelle, there was like all these other places in between. So of course, I'm sure some people heard of, hey, we're going on this expedition. It's leaving from La Rochelle, and people would come from the north and wherever to there to depart. But that's what we think so far from that area.
That makes sense. And what was life like for some of these early Acadians, some of our ancestors? What was their day-to-day? Because I mean, that's where the story is, right? What's their day-to-day experience like?
Yeah. I mean, they're coming into a uncharted land, right?
Sure.
I mean, this is like, it's forests, it's marshes, it's all of these places. And so they're coming in, they're meeting these local indigenous people. And what's amazing with Acadia compared to literally any other colonized area is the Mi'kmaq were so welcoming to the Acadians. They actually intermarried at some points. So they actually became like family. And they really helped the Acadians learn the land, the sea around these new homes. So they're coming in, they're trying to set up along the Annapolis River, which was like, you know, they figured this is the best spot to go. And so you can see those early maps around 1700 of all those Acadian families settled all along the river. So they're farming, they're fishing, and they're making this amazing advancement in diking systems called aboiteaux, and they're using it to fertilize these marshlands. They're basically making like a sluice and dike system to let the water drain out, okay, so that salt water can't come back in. And as the rain is like desalting the soil for decades, right? Like as it's doing that over generations, it's making that land so fertile. So they really harvested that like fertile marshland so they could farm. They had amazing farming. And they're just living their lives. They all had like multiple jobs usually, like they're doing their farming and fishing, but like they're millers and coopers and doing all of these other trades to build this thriving community. And they're relatively happy and self-sustained for, you know, decades, a whole century almost, until, you know, 1755, when Britain was like, hey, we like what you got going on here. We're gonna take this back.
Sure.
You
What
know?
can you talk a little more maybe about what the family dynamic was like?
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
when did
So
people get
families were
married? How many kids did we have?
Sure. Families were big, same as French Canadians. Those
Sure.
are familiar with Quebec research. So usually they had several children. Usually they were born about every 2 years, you know, given like the gestation period and then before having another child. And like infant mortality and child mortality was pretty on par with other settlements. It was uncommon for a couple not to lose at least one child in you know, early life. And so they would just all just work together. Like the men would be doing like the more hard physical labor out on the homestead. The women would be caring for the children. You know, they're sewing, they're working as midwives in the community, helping other women have their children, tending the gardens and all these things. And so it was very cooperative family life there. And yeah, they usually had like multiple children, and you know, that helped because the more people to help work the land and do the chores and do all of these things, it was more prosperable for them. So yeah.
And we're obviously we got to get to the major topic that everybody talks about now. When we talk about the Acadians, the
Mhm.
expulsion. How do we get there? Like what leads up to? Because it sounds
It's
like there's like almost 50 years of backstory plus
Yeah,
getting to the
it
date.
was a lot of back and forth between, you know, Britain and France controlling these lands. And at that time, leading up to that, you know, like the Great Migration, everyone's trying to expand their colonies and look for land in the United States and Canada. So really, it became a battle for like just control over those lands. So the Acadians very much felt like their own people. They did not want to be known as French. They didn't want to be known as British. They just felt like their own people. They just wanted to be free to practice their Catholic religion, to have land to live, farm on, all these things, raise their families. So when all of this is going on, they're telling whoever's in charge, whether it's the French crown or the British crown, like, we want neutrality. We don't want to fight against, you know, the French are their people genetically, right? So like, we don't want to
Sure.
go against our kin. We don't want to fight against Britain. We don't want to, you know, change our religion, because of course the English were like under the Protestant religion, and so they're like, just, we want to be left alone. So Britain, when they're in control, they're telling the Acadians, listen, you have to take an oath of allegiance. Like, you can be your own people, but like, you're swearing to us as your sovereign, right? So many Acadians, reluctantly kind of signed that oath of agreement. Many refused. And so it was like that, those repeated refusals, things like that really culminated into, okay, these Acadians, these French, are not going to be our allies. They're our secret enemies. They've never fully committed. And so that, and of course, like I mentioned, those lands, the British wanted those lands bad. I don't blame them for that, but and so of course the Acadians were the problem, and so they had to go. So really it was like back and forth, all the wars, like the French and Indian War had just kicked up. So much was brewing. And unfortunately it led to that decision of like the Acadians are going one way or another out of these lands.
So, and that gets us to, I know there's a date in your presentation of September 5th, 1755.
Yep, that was the declaration. They called all the men and boys age 10 and older down to Grand Pre, and they had them in the church. And basically the French had been, the Acadians had been doing this for a while, coming in for orders. Like, what are we doing? What are we supposed to do or not do? Do you want the oath of allegiance again? Like, what do you want to do?
Sure.
And basically they said, well, Governor Lawrence has decided now that this is our remedy to this situation that we're upon here. Everything's going to be confiscated from you, like, your homes, your cattle, your everything like that. You can take like some of your household goods, your money, and you're going to be put on ships. We'll try to keep you together. That's like the goal, is to keep the families together. And then we're going to be sending you off. So best of luck wherever you end up, is basically what the declaration said. And so what do you even do with that? I don't even know. But that's when it started, and it continued until 1756. Boats and boats and boats departing the area. Of course, some Acadians tried to hide. They tried to flee. They tried to just ride it out, and they were basically hunted down by the British to be deported.
Where did these boats end up, and what was life like for the people once they settled in whatever location they were forced to resettle in?
So in 1755, it started in and around Grand Pre, the Minas Basin. Those folks, several thousands, were put on ships. Those first initial ships went down to the U.S. colonies. So like Massachusetts, and then Virginia, and like even southern, like down to South Carolina, Georgia, all the states in between. When they got there, sometimes the English governors there were ready for these arrivals to come, and they're like, okay, well, we understand what they're doing up north. Our our compatriots up there are trying to take the land.
Sure.
So they're trying to get them in. They're putting them into like desolate conditions. I mean, it's basically they would live in homes where they would pay for the rent of it by like working. Sometimes their children would have to work in order to pay for that. My own family, Claude Bourgeois, my seven times great grandparents, they went to Massachusetts, and two of the daughters were spinning wool and flax that they had carried with them from Port Royal. A group of men, like a dozen men, came and took the girls away, basically like, you're going to work for us now. So Claude went, took the daughters back, and then as a fine, they didn't give them any food or anything for 2 weeks until he wrote to basically the governor of Massachusetts Bay, like, hey, don't you think my actions were justified? I went and took my kids back. And so, I mean, that's one situation, right? So then the ones that were sent to Virginia, the colony there was like, not our problem. I don't know what you're doing up there, but this isn't our thing. They ended up sending them to England. Okay, so they sat on the ships for 4 months in the port, went to England, and then just smallpox was raging there. And so a lot died from smallpox, from the conditions on board. So that was like the early ones were basically sent to the US colonies. Then you go and see where they fled to if that didn't happen. When this started happening in 1755, a lot of them fled to Ile Royale and Ile St. Jean. So they went over to Prince Edward Island. By then, that was a safe spot. And so they're like, okay, we're good. Then the British started coming in there. And they're like, okay, we're going to go to Quebec. We're going to go to Camp d'Esperance, which was Camp of Hope, which was a refugee camp on the Miramichi River. And it was absolutely horrific. There was no supplies. There was nothing to prevent like exposure and death. Smallpox hit the camp there. So it's like they're trying to find these bubbles of safety, and they're not finding it. And so then in 1758, the deportations happened on Prince Edward Island and Ile Royale, and those Acadians were sent directly to mainland France. So most people, when they hear about the expulsion, they hear about the 3 English ships that sank carrying the Acadians en route to France. And that was the Duke William, the Violet, and the Ruby. They all sank in the span of just 1 week due to a horrible storm. So almost 1,000 Acadians were lost just in one fell swoop like that. The ones in France, again, France is like, now we've got these people back. Like, okay, what are we going to do with them? And they're trying to help them settle, and it's just not working. And then, so of course, as 1755, 58, we get to 1763 when the Treaty of Paris is signed, basically allowing the Acadians freedom again. Okay, war's over. Where are you guys going to go? Are you staying where you are? Where do you want to go? That's when they started thinking, okay, maybe the Caribbean islands. Maybe we'll try our hand at Louisiana, which was in control of Spain then, but they're like, maybe this is the chance. They were going to St. Pierre and Miquelon in the islands because that was like the last French territory left. They're trying all these different places to basically re-find their family that they had been separated from, and to find a home where they could just live out the rest of their lives. Like they didn't know when this was going to end. Every day is just another day for them. Finally, they feel like the cloud is lifting, and then there's even just more destruction as people are trying to resettle because it's disease and they're so weakened just from just lack of care. It was just absolutely horrific.
And I think that's the big part. I mean, we hear about them being forced from their homes and resettled, but when seeing your presentation, which I have on YouTube, it really brought home that even when they resettled, a lot of them were in such terrible shape, in such terrible conditions, they didn't make it very long.
No.
They got to their new place and they died. Their families, a lot of them were just not able to continue just because of what they had to endure in order to get there. And that's
psychological effects, physical effects. Like it absolutely weakened them. Joseph Broussard de Beausoleil, like he's one, he's known as like the hero of the Acadian Expulsion. He fought guerrilla style warfare against the British for years. He ended up being captured. He was at Halifax. Finally, he was able to resettle. He tried real quick to settle in the Caribbean and was like, nope, we're not going to make it here. Ended up bringing like one of the first early groups to Louisiana. He made it, I think, a few months and he died. So he got to see the settlement of like Acadiana, the new Acadia, and didn't even get to enjoy it. All that work he did to help. So that's just one example. I mean, you have to think there, even after resettlement, the childhood losses were so great. You have to know the impact that had on a mother's body to be able to, conceive, to carry a healthy infant, to deliver. I mean, we're talking about the 1760s like childhood now is childbirth now is crazy. And you're thinking about then when like mortality rates were already high for childbirth.
Sure.
And so then you're putting a weakened woman, in that situation. It's just, you have to take all that into consideration, why the deaths were so high then.
One phrase that caught my attention in your presentation was the great and noble scheme. Can you explain kind of where that comes from?
It's like hearing the plan for an extermination almost, right? Like you hear about that with the Holocaust too. Like they had, like, how do you write that? Like, and people ask me, like, do I think that they plan to kill everybody, right? Like, did they plan the death? And it's like, no, I don't know if that was the plan. But when you're forcibly removing thousands of people, right, and you're putting them on overcrowded ships where disease is going to run rampant, without enough provisions, without warm clothing, with like, what do you think's going to happen? And when those first deportations are happening in 1755 and they're seeing all the deaths, they're hearing back, like a ship came in, only half of them survived to port, and they're only going from, Nova Scotia to like Virginia, right?
Right.
It's not a super long across the Atlantic type of voyage. They're hearing back the deaths are happening and they're still doing it. So it's like they didn't change their plan to accommodate that. You hear about stuff like that and you wonder what their plan was. But basically the great and noble scheme was, if we could get English settlers, good English settlers, right, into these lands, my God, the profits that we would get. They had the right idea, like, the Acadians are on something here. They're not utilizing the land for like profit and all these things. They're just living and sustaining, and they're doing cooperative things. Britain had that at that time, this mindset of like the economy, like we could make so much money. And I get the mindset, you can't fault them for, but it's just like, you saw what was happening as boat and boat and boat kept going, and you kept going. So that phrase always, like, this great and noble scheme, like, I hate it. But that's what, that was the plan. That was the plan. Get them out. The ones that, if we have stragglers, we're going to convert them. They're going to be Protestant, and they're going to stop speaking French. They're going to be angelicized into our community, they're going to adapt and assimilate. So that was kind of the plan.
I mean, I think we could talk about how horrific this entire thing was forever, but I do think that at least before we move on in terms of the history of the Acadians, a point that I always like to stress is it's a sad story. It's a story that makes you angry, but it's also a
Yeah.
story of resilience. Despite all of this, the Acadian culture is still there. It's still very present, which I find incredible. I spent some time up at Fort Kent in Madawaska, that area, and when both sides of the border, you see Acadian flags all over the place. And so that part of the story, I think, is super, super interesting.
Yeah. Despite all of it, right? Like, that their history is so deeply rooted in pain and suffering. And I'm sure those early generations, they just focused on what we do have left. Some people lost everything. They were just alone, right? And so they're starting over. And so I'm sure they just kind of said, this happened. They're just such strong people. We're so blessed to come from, and I call them hardy stock, but like, they're just so voracious in their way to say, like, no, you're not. And Acadians did fight back, and they did resist, and they said, this not today. They did whatever they could, with whatever they had available to fight back with. But they have come back stronger than ever. And you see that with other populations that have been through such pain, with like the Jewish community after the Holocaust. It's like, yes, this happened, but we're still here. And despite of it all, we're still here. And just to remember that this happened, and to keep that in your mindset of like, we're only here because our ancestors somehow survived it long enough to have children for us to be here. We're blessed for that, in that sense. But you didn't dampen the culture. You paused it for a second, right? But you didn't kill it. If anything, we're even more vibrant now that more people have access to their genealogy. They're into this whole world of like, wow, this is what I come from. We're not going to let it be forgotten again. And just perpetuating it forward. We have so many amazing people that are doing so many amazing things for the community. And we have all these great, like, with like the Congress that meets every few years, and we have like these amazing reunions, and just bringing light to, hey, we've been dispersed. We're all still cousins. No matter the distance, no matter whatever, we're all still one big extended family spread throughout the world. And just to be proud of where you come from, and to make sure that these events and these people don't get forgotten.
Absolutely. What I would like to get to talking about now, obviously you talked about all the work that people are doing to remember the Acadian story. And so we need to talk about your project, because you have an absolutely amazing, super ambitious, incredible project that you are working on. So please tell us, what are you doing right now?
So yeah, I kind of got in over my head with this one. Kind of stemmed from the idea of when I was doing my own family tree. I kind of noted people of significance, like different categories. Like for the king's daughters, I made a list of all of mine. And I kind of came across the Acadians, the ones that had perished as a result of the expulsion. And so I made my own little memorial list, like, oh, Marie Anne, she passed, at sea on her way to France, and things like that. And so over the years, like I kind of, as I got more into researching Acadian genealogy, like full time anyway, I'm seeing all of these people everywhere. And I'm thinking, like, is there a list, somewhere that someone's made of all of the losses? And I couldn't find one. And it made me mad, because when we think of the Acadian expulsion, it's like, well, several thousand died. Yes, correct.
Sure.
But like, who are the individual people? Like, who are your people? And that helps people of descendants when it's their family. And it just helps as a whole for the community to know the individual names. Like these are the people. It's not just a number, they're individual people. So I came up with the idea to create a master list of all the Acadians that were lost during the expulsion. So it's the Acadian Expulsion Memorial List. So I started this in September of 2024. I had just finished up a project that I had done on the King's Daughters. Same idea, like a spreadsheet of like, I listed the 765 ladies, their name, their spouses, how many kids they had, all of their pertinent information that we knew about them. So I had just done this massive project for them. And I thought, well, I could do the Acadians, like, no problem. So there's 765 versus I have 5,200.
Right, exactly.
Kind of kind of got over my head a little bit, but I'm so proud of it
For
because
sure.
it is a labor of love. Like I have cried, like those poor kids. Like I'm a mom. I have an almost 17-year-old son. Like that breaks me. And it's just so many people. It's whole families that are lost. So I started in September of 2024. I gave myself my first deadline of December 13th of 2024 because that is Acadian Remembrance Day. That is the day that two of the ships are thought to have gone down in the Atlantic en route to France, which was the Duke William and the Violet. So that has become Acadian Remembrance Day in honor of all of those lost. So I had 2,400, just over 2,400 names for part one, which was released in December of 2024. And then I gave myself another deadline for part two, which was in June of 2025. Because I was having shoulder surgery in July. So I was like, I'm going to get as many as I can done because it's rotator cuff surgery. So the recovery is terrible. So I was like, I'm going to need to take a few months off. So when I did it in 2005, in June, that was 4,900 names. So that's what's been published so far. I took my time off to recover. I've done a bunch of other stuff in the meantime. I kind of got distracted, but now I'm back full-time researching. So I have 5,200 names now. I've added another about 300 names in the past couple months. So the research is ongoing. I really wanted to be able to name them all in one place. I thought that was so important for the context of like history, just to have them. Who knows if anything will ever be done with it, some sort of monument or something. Like someone wants to take this work and do something with it, go. They made a Holocaust memorial with all those names. So I'm not saying that can't be a thing. Someone has an idea for that, let me know. So maybe something will be done with it, but also just for the research of the descendants. They can look for the names in their family and be like, well, it might not be a direct ancestor, but it's your cousins. Those are all your cousins, all of them.
Sure.
So I made it's in a spreadsheet. That way it's like, I love a spreadsheet because it's one line and you have all the information. Oh my God, I love a spreadsheet. So it's like their name, their spouse's name, the year about they got married, their parents' name and their marriage year, their birth year, their birth location. An important column I added was their last known location in Acadia. Sometimes we know that based on a census record, which is, thank God we have some of those. Sometimes it's like the birth of their child was just a couple years before in Grand Pré. So you figure you're most likely there in 1755. And then it's like their date of death, if we know it. A lot of the times it's estimated. It's like you were here in 1755. You weren't with your family in 1763 on a census in Massachusetts. So at some point you passed away, right?
Sure.
Or on the marriage record of one of their children, it usually notes like daughter of the late so-and-so. So then it's like, okay, we know by that date they've passed. Sometimes we're lucky enough to know like if the ship went down, like if they were on the ship, we know some sort of estimated time. So sometimes the location's a little sketchy too. Like your whole family went to Quebec, you probably passed on en route to Quebec. Their age at death is noted. If we can estimate that. And then the biggest impact of the project is the notes section, which not only just incorporates like little facts about them, like this is where they last were and whatever, but I've also taken the job to note who else in the family was lost. So it will say like lost their father here, lost their mother here, lost so many siblings. And that's really impactful because that's one family. And that's one impact on one family that's devastating. Then you see 5,200 lines of, holy crap, that's a lot. That is a lot. And so the impact on the Acadian community is what I wanted to highlight with that. And so, yeah, research is ongoing. I'm working through the Ile Royale folks that were in Louisbourg because a lot of those families were like military families. They're working for like the Louisbourg area. But they were deported too. They didn't care if you were Acadian from 1604. They didn't give a crap. Everybody's going.
Sure.
And so those families were lost too. So I've added maybe 50 in the last few days of those lesser known, less prominent families. Some people were in Quebec. They married in Quebec and they're like, hey, Louisbourg sounds great. Let's go there. Almost like they were there for a year and then they got deported. So technically not Acadian, but to me, they're still on the list.
Sure.
Yeah, my criteria is very like, if I feel like their death was a result of this, they're on the list. I mean, and I'm even including, the years for the expulsion are generally considered 1755 to 1763 once the Treaty of Paris ended. But people were settling in 1764, 65, 66, 67. They're going down to Louisiana, the Caribbean, and they're passing away. My ancestors were in Miquelon, minding their own business. And then the government's like, hey, we can't keep you here. You're going to mainland France. So in 1760, some, 7, they're going,
Right.
then they're coming back. So in 1778, another massive deportation. So I have my answers that passed in 1779 in like La Rochelle because they got deported that late. We're talking, 2 decades later. So they're counted, and I'm counting the child losses. They resettled in France, right? In 1763, they're there, but they're having 6 children in a row that are perishing young. That the mother's health has to have an impact on that, right? So I'm taking it all with a grain of salt, kind of, if I feel like whatever could have been a result, they're being added. So it's still actively being worked on now.
And you noted that you have, a list of the age,
Mm-hmm.
or rough age
Yeah.
at which they died. And one
Yeah.
of the things I saw you present, what is that average age?
24.
That's crazy.
24 years old is the average right now of the 4,900. And I've just added a bunch of kids. It's probably going to come down some. That's heartbreaking. I mean, that's someone at the start of their lives. And I mean, you have to think back then people weren't, I mean, they did sometimes, live to like 80, 90, 100. You see that in a record, you're like, my God, that's like 1,000 now. Like
Sure.
that wasn't the norm for then. So usually it was like 50, 60, so, by then was kind of like the lifespan for them. Just to imagine, I mean, just so many kids. And there's so many people that aren't on this list because we don't even know, we know they existed, right? But we don't have them accounted for. These would be like the kids that are born in Prince Edward Island. There was a census taken there, the Laroque census in 1752. Up until then, if kids were there, they were accounted for. How many kids could we have between 1752 and 1758 when they were deported? Maybe 4. If you had a kid every year, we're looking at like what, 7 kids? So you got to think there's kids that have no baptism record now because all those records were lost or destroyed. We don't have like the exact ship manifest. We just assume if they disappeared that's kind of where they went. So there's thousands that we know existed, but just we don't have a paper trail to follow them, and that stinks. That's hard. So you'd have to account for these are the ones we just know about. The average, I mean, I've seen populations anywhere from like 10,000 to like 18,000 in the Acadian region at the time. This kind of helps say like, if half of the Acadian population died, I'm at 5,000 now. So yeah, I mean, I expect more as I'm going. I'm trying to go by like area just because my brain, I see one and then I'm like, oh, but I should check Quebec. And I've got 1,000 tabs open on 2 different computers at all times because I want to find where are you on the next census? Where are you going? And so there's just so many people that just disappeared. We don't have any information for. I hope we find them someday. Records are being found still. So that's the hope. But for now, they're just kind of like probably passed. I'll note you just in case. I'll take you off if I can. I'd love to take you off the list, but until we know, it's like a little placeholder mark for them.
Well, this is an amazing project and
Thank you.
just an incredible service to those who have the Acadian ancestry to know that these people and everything we could possibly know about them is being recorded in one place where we can go back and look is tremendous. What an amazing resource. So thank you so much for this project and appreciate you coming on the podcast because this has been super, super interesting. Now, if somebody wants to get in touch with you and hire you for in the services you offer, and you're probably going to get a phone call from me in the near future.
Sure.
How does that happen? How does one get in touch with you?
Yeah. So Treasured Trees by Nicole at gmail.com is my email. That's the best way to reach me. I can even send you, after the recording, a link to my blog. You can put it in like the description notes or something. And that's where this project is held. I have other projects on there as well that I've had for a while that it's like, I should just put these out there. Like, I just didn't have a platform for, so I got like a free blogger account and I'm like, this will do. And I was adamant about making it free because no one should be limited, by income or cost or anything. Like these are your people. This is your history. This needs to be known. So I was adamant about making it free. Someday everyone's like, put it in a book. I'll buy a copy. Maybe. I don't know. Someday. That's out of my realm of like we talked about not being tech savvy. That's not even something I'm thinking about. But I know someone would actually because to print off a spreadsheet of 5,200 people plus, right? Like I'm still working. That's something I'm considering. But yep, an email. I'm also on Facebook. A lot of people know me from like my Acadian genealogy groups, my Descendants of Michelle Hashedi Gallant group. So people can just find me online as well. And just reach out and I'll send you the link to my blog. so people can access the projects. Yeah, and I'm always available by email.
Well, that's been cool. So thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Welcome.
This has
Thanks
been
for having me.
a super interesting conversation and a really important conversation. And the project is amazing. We've been speaking with Nicole Gallant-Nunes. Thank you again for joining us.
Thanks so much.
Now our fathers look at us and sigh with despair, to think that everything they love we simply do not share. But the spirit never dies, our culture will survive. Each of us must choose how much to keep alive. Each of us must choose how much to keep alive.
Special thanks to Josie Vachon for providing the music. You can find more about her at josievachon.com. This podcast was produced and edited by Mike Campbell. If you have any questions or comments, please email us at fclpodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at FCL Podcast for more information about the topics discussed. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to this episode.